We are blessed to partake and participate in such a beautiful Love and Responsibility series. This evening, we have David Hajduk as our guest speaker.
We are going to be talking about the gift. He reminded me how God became human. He humbled himself to become human, to give us what we have, the gift of life, right?
So please help me welcome David Hajduk, everybody.
The phrase that comes from Love and Responsibility is actually not a direct quote from Love and Responsibility. It's actually a paraphrase that's given to it by a famous person who did a great biography on John Paul II. The guy's name is George Weigel. Maybe you've heard of him before. He's actually the one who calls this the law of the gift. There's a Greek word that you'll come in contact with in a minute that doesn't quite mean that. But nonetheless, you'll get the point. So that's the night, and the subtitle that I'm giving is Finding Yourself in the Sincere Gift of Self. Before we begin, I have to tell you a little bit of a story. I actually want to tell you a story of a Christmas disaster. Okay, a Christmas disaster. It was an attempt at playing White Elephant with my family. Does anybody know White Elephant? You know this game? Raise your hand if you know this game. It's basically a game that you can play that's like a gift game, where you spend like $10, $20 tops, and you buy a gift, and you kind of wrap it, and you put it like in the middle, and like everybody, sits around, gets a number, and they have to go in the order, and what happens is like number one picks the gift that they want to pick, they unwrap it in front of everybody, and then, the next person who goes can either take their gift that they just opened, or they can go and pick a new one, right? And the idea is that that gift can only move around to a fourth person, and it freezes with the fourth person, right? So, this is crazy. Except there's one problem. It just didn't work with my family. It was terrible, okay? I think it's for a number of reasons. First is because we're just way too competitive. So, it wasn't pretty. Everybody was like, ah! The gift! Mine! Right? It's just like, you can't do it, right? The second is no sense of humor whatsoever. So you can make a gag gift. Like my wife and I, we got like some kind of Marilyn Monroe plate with the wind blowing. And it's like, and we wrapped it up. And who gets that? My Italian mother, who opens the plate and goes, "What's this?" My mom especially, did not like this game. Not good with the mom. In fact, she's never let us forget it. And if you have an Italian mother, you know what I mean. She will not let you forget it, right? Years went by. I was still hearing about the Marilyn Monroe plate. Right? That's just the way it was going. Okay, so, anyway, this is kind of a long story to intro. It's called a beleaguered intro. All right, so... But I think, to give my mom some credit, I think the reason why she had a problem with this game, mostly my mom, was because of how she approaches giving gifts. She takes giving gifts very seriously. She's actually one of the most attentive people I've ever met. You can say something like a passing comment about something you like or something you need. 2 days later, it'll be on your doorstep. She pays attention. And she notices everything. And for her, gift giving is no joke. She's really incredibly generous. And I think that's why she had a problem with the whole idea of combining a joke and a competition and a game with gift giving. Right? So I use that as kind of a funny example, but we can approach gifts in different ways, huh? And I think that what we're going to look at tonight is the difference between a genuine gift and one that's not. And maybe even more importantly, we're going to see that a fundamental aspect of our existence as human beings created in the image and likeness of God is the law of the gift. In fact, it may be the very essence of what it means to be a human being. Okay? So that's where we're going tonight. Now, I have to warn you about something. I'm a teacher. So you have to forgive me. All right? I am going to try to bring you into contact with what John Paul II said, and then hopefully help that and unpack that a little bit. Because to me, my words aren't nearly as good as his. So if I end tonight and you haven't really come in contact with what he had to say about this, then I haven't done my job. But if you see how beautiful what he says is, then I've honored him, hopefully, and also helped you. Okay, so what is the law of the gift? This is the quote from Love and Responsibility I want you to see. I'm going to read it. It's a little bit long. Please forgive me. Love proceeds by way of renunciation, guided by the profound conviction that it does not diminish or impoverish, but quite the contrary, enlarges and enriches the existence of the person. What might be called the law of ecstasis, that's the Greek word I was mentioning before, seeks to operate here. The lover goes outside of the self to find a fuller existence in another. Okay? This is the law of the gift. This going outside of the self to find a fuller existence in that giving of oneself to another, for another. Okay, actually, interesting, and I have no way of confirming this, so this is not like, something that you publish and say, David Hajduk said this and it's true. I have a suspicion. There is one of the major works of the Second Vatican Council is this work, Gaudium et Spes, all right? It's funny, church documents usually get their name from the first two words, but then the English translation looks nothing like it. So you've got Gaudium et Spes, which in Latin means joy and hope, right? But the English translation is the pastoral constitution on the church in the modern world. Anyway, so, John Paul II had a hand in writing that document. He was at the Second Vatican Council, and he quoted this phrase all the time. It was his favorite quote. So anywhere you see John Paul II's writing, he's always quoting this from Gaudium et Spes. And I have a sneaky suspicion he's the one who wrote it. That's my suspicion. It's not verified. It's not fact. Very bad scholarship. Don't. All right? So, man, who is the only creature on earth which God willed for itself, cannot fully find himself except through a sincere gift of himself. In other words, we're never going to find out who we really are, what it means to be a human being, what it means to be David, Sue, whoever, what life is all about, except through giving the sincere gift of ourselves. That's the key to a full human existence. This is what I might call the love of the gift. Finding yourself in the sincere giving of yourself. The pouring of yourself out for another, to another, for that other's own sake. And as a result of that gift, finding life, joy, happiness, a fuller existence. You with me? That sounds really, really tempting, doesn't it? All right, so the law of the gift is a fundamental truth of human existence. Why? That's what we're going to go to next. Right? Great. Why is there a law of the gift? Why? Why is this a law of human existence? Well, you got to start at the beginning. Literally at the beginning. Genesis. What does it say in Genesis 1? Then God said, "Let us make man in our image after our likeness. Let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the air, over the cattle, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps upon the earth." So God created man in his own image. In the image of God he created him, male and female he created them. We're made in the image and likeness of God. Fast forward a little bit from Love and Responsibility, which, by the way, Cardinal Karol Wojtyła wrote in 1960. You may have heard that. So let's skip forward to Familiaris Consortio when he's Pope. And he says that being created in the image and likeness of the God who is love, human beings are created for love. That God himself, in creating human beings in his image and likeness, inscribed in the very nature, in the very humanity of man and woman, the capacity and responsibility of love. And this is the punchline. Love is, therefore, the fundamental and innate vocation of every human being. Why? Why? Because we're created in the image of the God who is love. So if we're made in the image and likeness of the God who is love, then love fulfills our being and existence. That's what we're made for. That's the meaning of life. That's the key to a rich and full existence. In fact, in the theology of the body, it says this: love, gift, right? We'll see that relationship in a second. Gift is the existential content inscribed in the truth of the image of God. That's really fancy. Basically what that means is, what do we mean when we say the image of God? Well, we can say, we're a person. We're created a person. God created us with freedom, with all these. But what's the purpose of the freedom? What's the point of being a person? It's that we're made for love. That's the fulfillment of the person. That is the proper use of one's freedom. We have freedom not to do whatever we like. We have freedom to make a gift of ourselves. And it can't be a gift unless we freely give it. Thus, we need freedom. So, you see, it's because we're made in the image and likeness of God that we're created for love, that the law of the gift is fundamental to human existence. Are we doing all right? We're liking it? Oh, yeah. This one's going to be even better. Because love includes the human body, John Paul II said. And so, how is the law of the gift and the body related? Well, this is key. When God creates us in His image and likeness, to love as He loves, for love, to give the gift of ourselves, He creates us body and soul. Not more one than the other. Totally body, totally soul. Such that we can say in a certain sense, we don't have a body, we are a body. We are our body. Our bodies are us. We're not just a body. That would be a mistake. And in fact, that's the root of lust. Reducing somebody to merely their body. And missing their person altogether. But when we see that the body reveals a person created in the image and likeness of God, we got it, baby. We got it then. Because what shines through the body is the person. Unique, unrepeatable, sacred, holy, created in God's image. The body is made to participate in love. In the gift. And in fact, this is what John Paul II said in the theology of the body. The human body contains from the beginning the spousal attribute. That is, the power to express love. Precisely that love in which the human person becomes a gift and through this gift fulfills the very meaning of his being and existence. Whew. Now, obviously, this, just as an aside, is going to play out in a particular way in the love of a husband and a wife, and in their sexual relationship, where the total gift of their bodies to one another in sexual union is the total gift of themselves to one another. You see? Because the body is the person. And since we are our bodies, if we give our bodies totally, who are we giving totally? Us. This is also, by the way, just as an aside, why sexual relations only belong within marriage. Because it's only the married who say, I give myself totally to you, and I give myself totally to you through their vows. And then when they come together giving their bodies totally to one another, the language of the body is telling the truth. When the body says, I give myself totally to you in sexual union, the fact that they're husband and wife means that it's true. They have given themselves totally. And thus, their union tells the truth. And so, that total gift of self in and through the body, of course, plays itself out in a particular way in that expression of sexual union. But that's not what John Paul means by spousal. He's using this word analogously. Priests, celibates, religious, consecrated, men and women are to give their bodies in love. Because the body is made for love, for gift. When St. Teresa is picking those lepers off the streets of Calcutta and bathing them, she's loving as God loves, in and through her body. She's living the law of the gift. When parents care for their children, when we reach out to those in need around us, when we offer a hug to a friend who's sorrowful, love includes the human body. So don't for a minute think that this aspect of the spousal attribute merely applies to husbands and wives and merely is talking about sex. It's not. And in fact, I would argue I have to love my wife in and through my body besides sex most of the time. When I help with the dishes, when I'm bathing the kids, when I'm just holding her, when we're watching a movie, whatever the case may be. When I give her that peck on the cheek and I tell her I'm going to miss her tonight. You see? Little. And so this is important. It's for everybody, the spousal meaning of the body, the spousal attribute. The body is made for love for everybody. So don't conflate love and sex, although that's a particular expression in marriage. Are we good? Oh, the body's great. Made for love. Gift. All right. So love equals gift. It equals sincere gift. We're made to love as God loves. The question is, how does God love? Because that's the kind of love we're made for. Well, John Paul II, prior to John Paul II, Count of Wojtyła, when he was cardinal, wrote this wonderful article called The Anthropological Vision of Humanae Vitae. You know, if you ever want some light reading, it's a good one. Right? In this he says, love also means to give. That is, to make a gift. See, he would say, I believe, John Paul II would say, what's the definition of God's love, the kind of love we're created for? I think he would say, sincere gift of self. That's what it means to love. That's what it means to love. And that goes back to this quote from Gaudium et Spes. Man, who is the only creature on earth which God willed for itself. What does that mean? That means God willed us to be a person with freedom. We're not willed for the sake of something else. You know? Other creatures, by the way, are willed for our sake. That doesn't mean that they don't have intrinsic value. Of course they do. But they're willed for our sake. We can use them responsibly, but nonetheless, use them because they are willed for our sake. They don't have freedom. Persons have freedom, and it's against their nature to be used merely as a means to an end. So when God wills us for our own sake, what He's willing us for is for freedom. But freedom is for love. This is also from Love and Responsibility. In giving ourselves, we find clear proof that we possess ourselves. Being a person means, in a sense, I am my own. We all have that sense. It usually kind of comes in, really creeps in, about 2 or 3, it starts to exert itself. I'm me. I'm my own. Mom and Dad, That's where the child is no, right? No, mom and dad would say yes. Right? Like so, right? So that's the first thing. But it really kind of really creeps in like gangbusters at 15. You know the deal. You know what I'm talking about. That's when you all of a sudden realize, hey, you don't know me, mom and dad. Right? That little thing in you, right? I'm me. I'm my own person. I possess myself. I'm my own master. I'll make my own choices. Thank you very much. I'll run my own life. And then you start to really resent when they're running your life. Right? That's what, come on. Be honest now. Yeah. We're friends. Okay. All right? So, I'm still that way. Anyway, still like that. Who are we kidding? I always think we're a bunch of teenagers with God. But anyway, so. No. I do it my way. All right, so. Here's the thing. It's in giving ourselves that we realize that we possess ourselves, right? Because we know we are our own, it's that we have self-possessions, what John Paul II said. And it's in being our own masters and possessing ourselves that now we recognize that we can give ourselves. If we don't possess ourselves, we don't have a self to give. So we have a self, and that self is a self to give. And so freedom, in that giving, we recognize we have a self to give. By the way, just kind of another little relationship aside help. Oftentimes you ever find somebody who really starts to get into relationships, but they don't even really know who they are? That's going to be a tough one. Usually those relationships are probably going to be difficult. Now that doesn't mean that in and through the other we don't discover who we are. I can say I've discovered as much about me as I have about my wife over the last 25 years. Right? So through Shannon I've discovered David. But if I didn't have a sense of a David to give, then what would Shannon be getting? Do you see? So there's a sort of little aside, practical sort of thing with regards to relationships. Kind of important to have a sense of who you are. All right? So, sincere gift. If that's what we're made for, if that's the kind of love we're created for, if that ultimately is that law of the gift, that we're going to find ourselves in that sincere giving of ourselves, then maybe it's important to know sincere gift and how that breaks down. So let's start with sincere. Sincere, that means genuine, right? Love, to be God's brand of love, the kind of love that we're created for that's going to fulfill our being and existence, has to be genuine, has to be really about the other person and that person's good. It can't be a disguise for use of manipulation. But we all know that use of manipulation masquerade as love, don't we? Sometimes we find that one out too late. Love is actually incompatible with use. In fact, I think if you were to ask St. John Paul II what's the opposite of love, he would not say hate, he'd say using. Because if love is giving yourself for another's good, using would be taking another for your own. It's a fundamentally different stance. It's not receiving, it's taking. You see. The other person becomes an object. In other words, they're not willed for their own sake. They're willed for the sake of something else, whatever you want. So, that's important. Genuinely about the other person, and that person's good. Sincere also means true. If you're going to give yourself for the good of another, you have to know what is good. You've got to know the truth about what's good, so that you can choose it. It's not what I think is good, what you think is good, what we feel is good. No, it's what is good. Something that is good is known objectively by the intellect, and then we will it with our wills. You see? So this is important. You can't have love without the law of God. You can't have love without the commandments of God. You can't have love without the following the teachings of the church. And if people say the commandments are tough, the teaching of the church is tough, I say yes! Because it's showing us how to love. And love is tough. Love requires renunciation, it said in the first slide. It requires a sort of dying, a giving up of oneself. A pouring oneself out. That's tough. That's not for wimps. No. So, again, key, truth. Even St. Paul, you're going to use love. Anybody's going to have you married. His love is patient, love is kind. No offense, love it. 1 Corinthians 13. Live it, baby, live it. Choose something else for your... Sorry. Forgive me, St. Paul. Father knows, he's laughing. No, but here, what's the one that's missed? We get love is patient, love is kind, but it's not jealous. But we look over this one. Love does not rejoice in wrongdoing, but rejoices with the truth. Why? Because love wills the good for the other. Because it's only in that good that other is going to find fulfillment, happiness. Okay. Gift. Let's move on to gift. Gift means what? It means this. It means first that love is a choice. It's willed. It's not so much an emotion. That's what we think. There she is! Okay, so people say, how old are your kids? I say, my oldest is 22, my youngest is 10 months. I got everything in between. If you like an age, come to my house. You're bound to find it. Right? All right, so I'm still laughing. Gift. It's will. It's chosen. Okay? So love is first and foremost a choice we make. A choice for what? To give ourselves for the good of the other. It's not first and foremost a feeling we feel. Now, you probably talked about this when you talked about sentimentality and all these different things in previous sessions here about love and responsibility. It's not that there aren't genuine feelings of love, or that those emotions are bad. They're great, but emotions move us. They're supposed to move us in a direction. But the emotions aren't the love. The emotions are a feeling that's associated with it and may or may not play itself out in real love. And in fact, I can tell you this, sometimes real love don't feel good. So you have to really make an act of your will. It's not like Jesus is on the cross singing happy, happy, joy, joy. You know, like, it's a choice. You know what I mean? Ren and Stimpy. You got it. Yes! Awesome! I thought that one was going to show my age. It did. Okay, but... All right, so you get the point. Sometimes love is hard. You know, do you think it's easy to get up in the middle of the night with, like, you know, a crying baby? When you're 47 almost years old? No. Hard. Easier when I was 27. Hard. It was always hard. That's not what, but you do it. It's not like you were resentful. I can't believe this kid. So it's great when those emotions move you to give the gift of yourself, but sometimes it doesn't feel that way. And you've got to choose to give the gift to yourself. So love is in the choosing, not in the feeling. The feelings are wonderful, lovely, but that's not the love. Please don't confuse those. In fact, John Paul II says in Love and Responsibility, to confuse the love and the feeling can actually be dangerous to authentic love. Why? Because when let's say that, things are kind of not great with my wife. I mean, they're fantastic, by the way. But let's say they're kind of not great with me and my wife, and like we're going through that drive here, we're kind of missing each other, connecting, communication not so good, and I feel like totally like I'm not being paid attention to, and it'll take it up. And then of course, but then there's somebody at work who's paying a lot of attention. And then they can have all kinds of feelings. What? First of all, I couldn't imagine that happening personally in my case, but let's just say that were to happen. Would the feelings be telling me who I really love? If I don't feel that way for my wife, I don't love her anymore, I must love the person at work? No, see? Conflating those things to say that the love is the feeling is dangerous to authentic love. Dangerous to authentic love. All right. So the last thing that gift means is not just that you freely choose it, because gifts must be free. You've got to choose to give them, otherwise they're not gifts. But also that it requires sacrifice. Gifts always cost something. Gifts always cost something. You have to pay. Somebody's got to pay. Right? And so, if it's going to be a gift, it requires something of us. In fact, it requires us of us. And this is where we can say love is a renunciation. Love, in a sense, is a dying to oneself. Love is an emptying, you could say. That's where Philippians 2:7 comes in, because we look at the love of Jesus, who gave the sincere gift of himself in through his body on the cross for you and for me. What do we see? Have this mind among yourselves, which is yours in Christ Jesus, who, though he was in the form of God, did not count equality with God a thing to be grasped, but emptied himself. Emptied himself. Because that's what God's love does. Pours itself out and never stops doing so. Every last drop that fell from the cross. For you and for me. So, love is the sincere gift. But it's not just love and responsibility. St. John Paul II tells us that love is responsibility. Love is taking responsibility. Responsibility for love is responsibility for the person. If I'm going to love someone, I take responsibility for them. I can do that because I'm a human being created in God's image and likeness who has freedom, so I'm the only creature that technically can take responsibility. I'm the only one able to choose my response to a given stimulus. See? So I have to take responsibility for another. John Paul says, choice is always the affirmation of the value of the object chosen. By the way, this is a very, very important thing. When we even choose things like activities, when I choose to lie, it's like what I've done is I've made a kind of alliance between myself and dishonesty. You see? It affirms the value of the thing I've chosen. So I affirm dishonesty. And by the way, what happens through my choice to be dishonest is I almost take that into my own identity. Because our choices are self-determining. So I become a dishonest person when what? When I freely choose dishonesty. I've affirmed that value, you see. And so the affirmation of the value of the object chosen is always coming through in the choice one makes. So, and here's the thing with love. It always affirms the value of the person, not of anything that person does, not any secondary values. Not they make me happy, they make me laugh, not they work hard, not they're beautiful, not, all the sexual values, all the alternative, all of those values, whatever they might be, are secondary to the value of the person. Our choice, if we love, is always for the person. Even if those secondary values are attractive to us, they are associated with a person and can never be separated from that person. You see? So love, true love, reaches through and touches the person. Reaches through and touches the person. And that's important because fundamentally what love does, what the sincere gift of self does, when I give myself for another's good, for that person's own sake, and when they do that for me, what is affirmed? My value as a person. That I'm worth it. That I have dignity. That I am valuable just for me and not for anything I can do for you. And that makes me feel like I could soar. That's the kind of affirmation we really want. That's the kind of affirmation of our personal value. You know what gets screwed up in the mix? A lot of people try to get affirmed for all kinds of things that don't really have anything to do with their person. I want to get affirmed because I look a certain way. I want to get involved because I'm a hard worker. I want to get involved because I'm successful. I want to get affirmed because I'm a great singer. No offense, Dan, you are. And then I want to get affirmed for all these things. But that's not really what I want to be affirmed. What I really want to be affirmed is me. My personhood. That me, David, who is not identified with any one or even combination of those things, is worth it. And that's what love, real love, the gift, does. Willed love expresses itself above all in the desire of what is good for the beloved person. And thus, it takes responsibility not just for the person, but for the good itself. We have to feel ourselves all empowered to take responsibility for what is good and to oppose what is evil. Why? Because we take responsibility for persons. Because we're called to love. Love stands for the good, opposes the evil. Stands for what affirms the inherent value of the person. Opposes what opposes it. You see? That's what love does. And in the case of sex, of course, That means responsibility for the natural purpose of the instinct. People use love as an excuse for why they break God's commandments all the time. Right? And most of them are trying to avoid babies at the same time. Right? So they can talk a game about love, but if you're opposing God's purpose for his creation of sexuality, you're not loving. You might be feeling a certain way, but remember what I said before. Because you can't love without willing the good, without taking responsibility for the good, which is taking responsibility for the good of the person. That was a little heavy, okay? But we know what I'm talking about. So love divorced from a feeling or sense of responsibility for the person is a negation of love itself, and necessarily egoism. It's about me. It shouldn't be, I long for you as a good. See how that's ego-directed? I long for you as a good for me. I want to keep you around here. Not that there's not some of that. I mean, people wouldn't get married if they didn't think the other person was a good for them, right? But if it remains there, it's egoism. It's got to move to, I long for your good. I don't just long for you as a good for me. I long for your good. That I long for that which is good for you. Which is ultimately what God wills. Because that's ultimately what's good for us. Okay, this will be the conclusion. A woman is capable of truly making a gift of herself only if she fully believes in the value of her person and in the value as a person of the man to whom she gives herself. And a man is capable of fully accepting a woman's gift of herself only if he is fully conscious of the magnitude of the gift, which he cannot be unless he affirms the value of her person. Realization of the value of the gift awakens the need to show gratitude and to reciprocate in ways which would match its value. That's beautiful. So, what's fundamental to the law of the gift? If we're going to live out the law of the gift, what's fundamental? A recognition of the value of your person and of the other. In other words, and this is my own little addition, you will not find this on John Paul II in the Love and Responsibility. This is going to be an ending with my own little addition. This means we must claim the truth of our belovedness. First and foremost, we must claim it, own it, that you are loved. He loved you first. Thank you. Providential. With an everlasting love. As long as God's been God, He's been loving you. Not someone who looks like you or is from the same gene pool. You. Personally. He called you by name. And you are His. My friends, it's at the feet of Jesus. That's the only place where we're going to find this recognition of our value. We find it in Him. In the one who loved us. In the one who calls us His beloved. And our belovedness has nothing to do with what people say about us, with what we can do or produce, what we look like, what we earn. My friends, it's from the fact that He loved us first. Loved us right into existence. That's first. And He pours that love into our hearts in the Holy Spirit who's been given to us. And empowers us, therefore, to live the law of the gift. Because we're not living it on our own power. We're created to love as God loves in His image and likeness. And so what does He do? He gives us His own love to love with. That's grace. And so let's go to the feet of Jesus. I'm going to end tonight with a wonderful prayer of St. Francis of Assisi. I don't know if you've ever heard this prayer. This is prayer about the Eucharist. You know, St. Francis loved the Eucharist. He was the one who had a devotion to churches. Did you know that? Making sure churches were clean. And he would also pray for Jesus and the Blessed Sacrament in every church throughout the world. He'd invoke the power of Jesus and the love of Jesus and the Blessed Sacrament. Powerful, St. Francis says. Listen to this. Let everyone be struck with fear, the whole world tremble, and the heavens exult, when Christ, the Son of the living God, is present on the altar in the hands of a priest. O wonderful loftiness and stupendous dignity. O sublime humility. He pours himself out. The Lord of the universe, God and the Son of God, so humbles himself that he hides himself for our salvation under an ordinary piece of bread. See, brothers, the humility of God, and pour out your hearts before him. Humble yourselves, that you may be exalted by him. Hold back nothing of yourselves for yourselves, that he who gives himself totally to you may receive you totally. Amen.
Amen.
Overcome by the joy you're bringing, with your words in our hearts still ringing. Let us join with the angels singing. Your love will find a way. So come down, come dwell within our hearts, Lord. Come now, come dwell within our hearts, Lord. Come down, come dwell within our hearts, Lord. Come now, come dwell within our hearts, Lord. Oh, it's only grace that matters. Heaven and earth forever after. All bow down before you, Master. Your love will find a way. Overcome by the joy you're bringing, with your